Welcome to episode 16 of the Camera Shake podcast, the podcast all about cameras, photography, videography, and everything that's got anything to do with any of that. Well, so we're back. We kind of had a week's break, but then we didn't because we recorded a double episode 2 weeks ago.
Yep, which I'm still tired from.
Yeah, I'm still recovering. So we had a week's break because you went on holiday.
I did.
How did that go?
I did. It was really good. Really good. Just down to Devon for a week.
Cool.
So those of you who are not in the UK, who may not be familiar with where Devon is down in the southwest of England. And the weather was pretty good. Sticky, but a couple of hot days, a couple of rainy days, typical kind of weather. Yeah. Although it's been sweltering hot up here, as I understand it, which it is today, and I am dying.
And so in order to record this podcast, we have to turn the fan off. That's it's
amazing.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So, so for those of you who are used to having like air conditioning in your homes, we don't really have that in the UK. So we gotta suffer, right?
And you know, I had a couple of friends of mine. They've got a dog, and I got to spend an entire week with a dog. So I felt like you.
Hey, yeah. Cool. Well,
so I'm getting the dog reference in before you do today.
Well, see, like I don't know if you probably can't really see this, but I'm covered in scratches and bites and everything, like everywhere from puppies in the biting phase at the moment, so the teething phase.
It'll pass. Enjoy it while it lasts. You'll miss it when it's gone.
Yeah, it's like he's got these like they call it the zoomies, where he like goes nuts for about half an hour or something. Mm-hmm. He goes totally crazy.
Yeah,
he just speeds around like a nutter and he bites everything, and then he just flops down and is asleep for the next 4 hours.
Lucky him.
Yeah,
wish we could do that.
Yeah,
that'd be nice.
Cool. So you spent a week in Devon.
Yeah, loved it. Glad to be back though. Glad to be back. I want to get back into things again. It's nice to relax for a week, and nice to see some friends properly for that time as well. But I want to get back working again, and as far as we can go anyway.
So here's the thing: did you take a camera?
I did.
Did you take a photo?
Hold on, I took 2 cameras.
Oh right, okay.
Ask me the second question again.
Did you take a photo?
No.
Did the cameras get out of the bag?
No, not once. Not once. That's terrible, isn't it? Oh, that's bad.
Well, I used to think that, but now I kind of think like, it's like what's more important, spending time with like friends and family or, taking pictures. So
true, absolutely true. And it just didn't come up that I would take it, because we'd be out doing things day to day, and to be honest, I couldn't really be bothered lugging my camera around.
Yeah.
So I took a few iPhone shots and whatnot, but everybody else was taking. I was like, I'm more than happy with that.
Yeah, it made me thinking actually today. Today was the first day that the puppy could go outside. So the way this works is like they have their vaccinations, and you have to wait a certain amount of time before they're allowed to go outside. So today was the very first day when Solo could actually leave the house and go for a walk. So today we took him on his very first walk ever.
You took a camera?
Well, no, I didn't. See, the thing is like, I was like for the last few days or something, I've been thinking about different photos that I want to make and stuff like that. And then today we went out for this like 5-minute walk, right? But it was Solo's first walk. And so my stepson said, did you take a camera? You should really be filming this. And I'm like, yeah, I should. I should really be filming this. This is like, it's like a family event, right? Mm-hmm. In a weird way. And really all I had on me was my iPhone. And that was perfectly cool.
I'm surprised you didn't take the Fuji.
Yeah, I mean, so was I. Yeah, I was surprised about that. But really, in the heat of battle,
you were more excited to take the dog out than worry about a
exactly.
Things, right?
But the cool thing about this, though, is once again, it's like one of these things where like the best camera is the one that you have on you, and in this case, it was just a phone, so it was great. And I shot a few pictures. I've got a few pictures of him goofing around the first time on his very first walk ever, and that's perfectly cool. It's a nice little memory, and actually the photos turn out pretty cool. Yeah. So really, the phone was really all it took. So there's really no need. And if you think about it, had I taken the Fuji for on this particular occasion, you have to go through the whole shebang of like, transferring the images onto your a computer and then editing them and blah 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 and uploading. So on the phone it was much easier.
Yeah.
And I like to use the Lightroom app on iPhone to just do a quick edit.
Yeah.
And although
I've been using that a lot lately.
yeah, it's great. It's awesome. I mean, it's perfect. It's pretty much, by and large, the same functionality that you have in Lightroom.
It's got all the main bits in there you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, still JPEGs and whatnot. There's only so far you can.
You can shoot RAW on iPhone now.
Have you got a fancy new iPhone? Have you?
No. My iPhone is like an iPhone X. You can shoot in the Lightroom app. You can shoot in RAW.
Do you have to do that via the app?
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly. Yeah,
that's new on me.
Well, I don't know if you have to, but you can. That's kind of how I've always done it.
Wow.
But then, but the one thing I have to say is that, to be brutally honest,
is it raw?
It's not. RAW isn't RAW. If you know what I mean. It's like it's not. It doesn't give you the same flexibility that you would have like with a Nikon DNG RAW file or something like that, or Canon or whatever. Sure. So it is somewhat different. And if I'm brutally honest, the kind of the editing, like the flexibility, that the dynamic range that you get out of editing a JPEG on your phone is perfectly acceptable. No problem at all. Especially if you think about the kind of photos that you would take with your phone. Yeah. Snapshots essentially. Yeah. And then to run them through a quick edit, you can save your presets. So you can even like make your own little LUTs almost, make your own preset and save that, and then you can run it on your photos as a starting point or something. No problem. I mean, you can literally you can edit a photo in like a minute flat or something, especially when it comes to like, and I have to say, doing that in Lightroom on your phone is actually more intuitive in many ways, especially if you're used to editing on Lightroom. It's more intuitive than using the built-in, Apple edit function menu thing, because the controls are just weird to me.
Oh, I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it at all. Just much prefer the Lightroom version. Yeah. Definitely. And it's when I'm editing them, I'm finding that particularly if it's a daytime shot, it's good as gold. You can come up with some cracking stuff. Yeah. When it starts getting dusk and evening time, and this is then to do with the camera on the iPhone. It's nothing to do with the Lightroom app at all.
Yeah.
But I don't get what I want from it, I have to say.
I'm not too keen on the low light performance on those at all. But I mean, generally speaking, like your average kind of snapshot, where you just, you whip your camera out, you take a picture, and you kind of worry about pretty much anything and everything afterwards, as in like, the crop and everything else. I think it works perfectly fine. Especially if they're meant, let's say for social media. Because I mean, this is how this sort of thing works. Like for me, and I'm sure it's the same for most people. You take that kind of photo and then it goes straight up to Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is. So, you take the photo, you make a quick edit, up it goes, bang. You didn't have to move the file between different devices or anything. It's just super quick, awesome. And of course, I mean, Photoshop, we talked about another kind of Photoshop app that allows you to kind of
capture,
to create some
capture,
to create some kind of cool kind of edits very very quickly and sort of add some looks to your photos. There's a whole range of different things. You can go into like major depth when it comes to editing photos on your phone is concerned. From a practical point of view and a simplicity of use type perspective, I think Lightroom just works really well. For me. Just in the past, I've used a number of different kind of apps to edit, but I've come to find Lightroom really a simple solution. I mean, you can even do RGB curves on the app.
You can,
Happy days, I mean,
you do need your Adobe subscription to use the Lightroom app, correct?
Right. So I mean, yes. Yeah. Okay. So I should add that that's really, as long as you have the cheapest Adobe subscription package, which is the photography package, which is like Photoshop and Lightroom. Then you can use all the Photoshop and Lightroom apps.
How much is that these days? Like £20?
No, it's less than that. It's about 10, 12.
It's like £10 a month? 10 or 12?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So totally worth it.
I'll tell you what, am I a fan of subscription models in general? I have to say, I'm still slightly undecided on that. there's something that bugs me about it, and there's something I find quite good about it, all at the same time. That aside, for £10 or £12 a month, Lightroom and Photoshop is a cracking deal.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? When you talk to people about subscription models in general, you kind of find that you really have like almost like two groups of people. You know, one group of people would say like, oh, the whole subscription idea stinks, and you know, if I buy something, I want to own the thing. You know, the software like it used to be. You know, where you bought Photoshop and it was like freaking £2,000 or whatever it was, where it's incredibly expensive. And then everything, there's an upgrade that comes out, you have to kind of pay again. And so, and then of course there's a subscription model where you pay a monthly subscription, and then therefore you get the latest updates as they come out. And so it just depends on what's more valuable to you. You know, personally, I mean, you know, I'm not saying Photoshop, for instance, is the only software out there, and I'm not even saying it's the best editing software out there, but what I'm saying is that it's definitely the most compatible software out there. Because this is the thing, I think, whenever you get into these discussions, not necessarily arguments, but these kind of discussions about which editing software is better than another, you know, it kind of very often, it boils down to, right, if you're just editing your photos and that's what you do, maybe it's your hobby, or, you know, and you don't collaborate with anybody else, then you can pretty much use whatever you want. Right, doesn't make a difference, because all that matters is the end result, and how you got there. Who cares, right? Whether you use Photoshop or whatever, or whether you use Premiere Pro and video, or Final Cut or Sony Vegas, or who cares what it is, as long as the final result is what it's supposed to be, right? But as soon as you start working and collaborating with other people, compatibility becomes a real issue, and it becomes really important, and you know, and that's where things like the Adobe Creative Suite comes in, whether it's Premiere or whatever. You know, it's, for instance, on a very simple level. Like, for instance, you know, if we collaborate on thumbnails for YouTube videos, for example, you know, I can just send you the Photoshop file. You can open it in Photoshop, bang, all the layers are there, everything's there, easy. I'm sure there's probably another way of doing it, but it's just an easy way of doing it. You know, and you can just make changes or use elements or whatever, and it's all fine and no questions asked, and it's done. In, you know, from my perspective, like in my photo editing workflow, I bounce back and forth between Lightroom and Photoshop all the time, pretty much in every edit I do. And so that workflow is so seamless that it saves me a lot of time and hassle. You know, you don't have to save a file and then open it in another software and then save it again, and then maybe even changing format because the other app can't read that format or whatever it is. It just gets way too complicated. I'm not saying it's not doable. I'm just saying it's more complicated than it needs to be. And if I think like from a purely practical perspective, if you have to edit one photo, it may not necessarily matter that much. But if you have to edit 50, 100 headshots, you know, the moment you save just 1 minute per headshot, that quickly adds up to 100 minutes. And all of a sudden you saved yourself almost 2 hours of work just by making that one change. And that's when it becomes really, really important. And so, you know, so it's a matter of being compatible. You know, this is exactly the same point that I try to make to people when this whole PC versus Apple discussion, you know, starts again. Again, you know, my attitude is like, I don't really care whether you've edited this on a PC or on a Mac. If you're happy doing what you do, and do what you do, I mean, who cares, right? Because I'm really just interested in the end result. But if you work in an environment where everybody else uses one system, i.e., let's say in the creative industry, let's say everybody else around you works on Mac, then you would be stupid not to work on Mac, because it'll just cuts you out, or makes your ability to collaborate with everybody around you so much harder. Absolutely. So why wouldn't you? It makes no sense, you know. And yes, Macs are not as good for gaming, but that's not what we're doing here. We're editing stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want to game, then do whatever, right?
I never really appreciated that until I moved to Mac properly in 2012. So that's some time ago now, and I won't look back unless something goes horribly wrong with Apple, which it could easily do.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, like, it still stands that if everybody around you like uses the system and it allows you to collaborate with people, it's we're in a collaborative industry. That's you always work
more
with
so than ever right now, right?
Absolutely, yeah, because the your ability to transfer files is so much easier nowadays. Even like large files, terabytes of data, you can transfer relatively easy, or like gigabytes of files the size of like several gigabytes. It's easy to transfer. It's not much of an issue. If you think about like how we were working over the summer, we talked about this a couple of episodes ago when we were doing the Box Music summer concert kind of thing. We're dealing with video files. I mean, only a few years ago, it would have been impossible to just simply transfer these files via the internet. It would have been a case of like putting them onto a stick or some other device, right? And then physically moving that device from one place to the next, or dropping stuff into some place, and it would have been just way too complicated and would have never happened. And so in this instance, because we're now able to transfer these kind of file sizes so much more easily, we now have people sending stuff in via the internet, and we're collaborating in the editing process, and even we've been collaborating cross-platform.
Yeah,
actually,
totally.
And all of that stuff's happening. It's because we're all able to easily collaborate, and that is becoming more important rather than less important. So,
I agree.
Since we're all sort of interconnected in a way,
yeah.
And in any creative process, you do one thing and then you move data onto somebody else. So, that is on a professional level for me. That's really important. So, if everybody else changes to PC, call me a lamb and I'll follow, no problem, because it's actually going to make my life easier. But it's like, it's like I said earlier. I mean, it's just that age-old, argument about what's better. It's like in my instance, I always say, like, I don't care what's better. It's like all I care about is what works in my little environment.
Totally. So I took my camera for a couple of reasons. Actually, one is that I was intent on taking a landscape photo.
Oh, right, okay.
To, cool. In light of our, this month's competition, which we'll get onto a little bit later.
Were you going to join the competition?
No, I'm assuming in the rules we've got employees may not, that kind of stuff. So that was one of my intent. But my other intent was actually that a good friend of mine who came with me down to Devon, Claire. She's a teacher, and she's been doing a lot more video work at school over lockdown and things like that to help teach her classes and for her teachers and whatnot. But she's been more and more interested in photography, and I was hoping that perhaps we'd find a point that we could take an hour or so and just take some photos, and perhaps I could pass on a little bit of knowledge to help her go out on her own, and perhaps even get a DSLR and start doing those kind of things. But unfortunately, we didn't quite find the time. We're all too busy, and you imagine what these weeks are like, and you start, let's go here, let's go there, and it didn't quite pan out. But one day I will pass on some knowledge there for sure. What else has been happening?
What else? Well, I tell you what, we've been doing our bit for the environment this week, because we've gone down to being a 1-car family.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what's been happening. Mainly because this is one of the positive outcomes of the whole lockdown shebang, is that we've realized that we really don't, in all likelihood, I should say, disclaimer there, I would think in all likelihood we probably won't need 2 cars, actually, because my wife works across the road, so literally her commute is a 20-second walk. I work a lot from home. I don't really need to drive that much, and whenever one of us needs the car, it's there. And so what we've realized is that we haven't actually really been using both cars,
right?
And so, of course, then that bears the question, is like, why burden yourself with 2 cars? Like, why pay for 2 cars and everything else? So so we kind of thought, and at the same time we kind of thought, like, there may be occasions where it would be useful, like, for instance, if I'm out or something and my wife needs to do the shopping or whatever. But actually, you can take the bike to the superstore.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
there are alternatives to it, and alternatives that are usually, for the most part, more environmentally friendly and also save us a ton of money. So
absolutely.
So we figured, we're going to give this a shot. And who knows?
Remind me, what time do we normally film this podcast?
About midday.
Remind me, what time is it now?
So much later.
And remind me, why is that?
That is because my wife needed the car to pick up our daughter. But
I'm joking. No,
that's true. I mean, I'm not saying there will be moments where, or there will be times where we will need to be able to we'll have to be mobile at the same time. But here's the thing, like, even if there are occasions where, let's say, we have to pay for an Uber, let's say, or even if there are occasions where we might have to hire another car for a day or something, right? That's still going to be cheaper, significantly cheaper, right? Than to run 2 cars outright for the whole year. So yeah, there will be those moments. But I think it's sort of a bit of an experiment where we're just trying to work out whether we can actually do it. And the reality is that if we work out, like, in 6 months' time, if we figure out that it isn't working, then we can always get another car. So
no big deal, right? You're back to where you were.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? So but for now we're down to 1 car family. And then the other thing I thought was, because it was actually my wife's idea. And so we were talking about it originally in the context of...
Isn't it always?
Pretty much. Well, I would say that usually when, I come up with the stupid ideas, seeing that this is her idea, that made me think, I kind of thought, maybe this isn't a stupid idea. So I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll go along with this.
Shh, don't tell her that.
Although I say go along with it, I quite like the idea from the outside. Now,
it's a smart move.
Well, and so, we also thought that, because, like I said, when we first started talking about it, we talked about it from an environmental point of view, right? Because we kind of thought, like, we can do our bit for the environment, and maybe 2 cars, if we don't need them, then it seems pointless. And so we thought, like, okay, so if we reduce down to 1 car, then surely we really want to get a car that's actually environmentally friendlier than the cars that we've been running so far. So we decided to get a hybrid car. Which is at least in part electric. So,
So is that part petrol, part Fred Flintstone?
Kind of.
Running
yeah, exactly.
Ground, yeah.
That's
just assume.
Yeah, yabba dabba doo. It's a yabba dabba doo drive.
Yeah.
It works perfectly. It's part electric. So what happens is, it's got a battery. It's got an electric engine as well as a petrol engine.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, when you drive around, that will charge the electric engine, or the electric, the battery, essentially. So every time you brake, that brake energy will be used to charge up the battery. And so over time, the battery charges up. And then what happens is, if you're doing less than whatever is 30 miles per hour, then it'll switch to electric, and then you'll just drive on the electric battery power. Okay. And so it constantly... It constantly keeps changing between electric and petrol, but you don't realize it's doing that at all. Not a thing. You just don't know.
Well, I mean, I heard your car for the first time earlier on today, right? And I didn't even know you were driving.
Oh, so quiet.
No, sorry, I lie. I heard you coming because I heard your aircon on.
Yeah, right.
But as soon as you turn it off,
yeah, there's virtually no noise. It's that was the first thing I think. For somebody who has been driving a diesel truck before this, that was the first thing. Like, on the diesel, you turn the engine, and bear in mind, this is the same car, just a different type, different engine drive system, whatever. But with the diesel engine, you turn the key, and there's like a shutter, and it's like there's vibrations, and there's the sound, and there's no question that you've just turned on the engine. I mean, it just it's like a big old engine going. And with this hybrid, you press a button and you think nothing's happening. There's no noise, no engine, nothing, and then it just moves.
Toyota, it's broken.
yeah.
Have you pushed the accelerator yet? No, I can't hear anything. It's broken.
Yeah. There's some weird magic going on there because you can hear sound and it just starts moving. It's great. So, so as a consequence, we'll be using less petrol than we did before. So, so that's a big change for us, really. This week, and we'll see how that goes.
It's good. Look forward to hearing about that in 3-6 months.
Yeah, it's like, I can't make it to the podcast today because I don't have a car.
Wife's got the car again.
Yeah, but if you think like on top of that, you save a lot of money, man. And because now all of a sudden you only need to pay for one car insurance, rather than two, and the road tax.
Zero probably.
That's £20 as opposed to 195 on my own car.
Just saying, mine's less than that, and it's just a diesel.
It's
just saying.
Crazy.
Just saying.
How much you pay in road tax?
I think mine's 20 as well.
Really?
Yeah, diesel. Just diesel.
How does that work?
Super cool.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, my road tax
it's 5 years old as well. It's 2015 Audi estate, and it has this AdBlue stuff that goes in, which takes all the nastiness out of diesel.
Is that
so that what comes out of the exhaust isn't actually particularly pollutant?
Is that like
I think
is that one of the engines? Wasn't it like VW stroke Audi were like cheating on the emissions or something? Is that one of those?
Don't know.
Cars?
I probably. Let's cut this. Cut. I don't know.
You might be able to get some money back.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I don't know if that's one of these. Maybe.
It's one of those things where I always think like, look, man, VW have basically they've been busted, but I'm pretty damn sure that everybody's been on that. Like everybody's been at it
in some way or another.
For sure. 100%.
No question.
So I think this there've been a lot of other car manufacturers that are either praying that they won't get discovered or found out, or they've made changes to like secretly revert things.
Of course.
Whatever's going on there.
Of course, man.
Anyway, so yeah, so that's been a big change, the car thing. The other thing I tell you what that was actually really cool this week was the photo video chat.
Yeah, I'm sad that I wasn't on it.
Yeah, because you were happily sunning yourself in sunny Devon.
Yeah, I think it was raining that day, just saying.
So what we did, this is actually, this was really quite interesting, I thought. So normally we do we started the whole photo video chat really as one of these things during, when we were like in full on lockdown and people were obviously not at work and they were at home, and, and a lot of people that I knew were saying like, I've been stuck at home and I don't know what to do. I'm bored and I haven't had the camera out in weeks, sometimes months. And, we're just talking about the different things that you could do at home with your camera when you can't shoot the things that you would normally shoot. Like, for instance, if you're into wildlife photography, now you're locked down, you can't go out and you can't shoot wildlife. Or let's say you like shooting events or concerts. Now you can't do that because there are no concerts. And now you're sitting at home, you can't really work out, what else to do. Mm-hmm. And so it really just started as a sort of a discussion group almost. We're on Zoom, totally free, and people were just kind of turning up and we're just having a talk about all different things that we come up with and ideas of stuff to do. And so that happened weekly, and then of course we ended up talking about different aspects of photography, and we're talking about some of the tech things and lighting and different types of photo shoots and all sorts of different things to do with cameras and whatever. And now that's kind of we've gotten to the point where things are starting to move again. People are going back to work, and of course now a lot of people are not available during the day anymore because they're back in back in work. And then we decided to move the photo video chat to an evening. And the week before last, we did a bit of I think it was like a Lightroom stroke Photoshop type of a thing where we're talking about a typical headshot edit, and we're just taking people through the edit and just explaining how things work. And that was really really successful, and a lot of people came back to us and said they really enjoyed that. But
I love that. I learned some stuff on that.
yeah. I mean, I like watching any of these things because no matter what it is, you never know everything there is to know about things like Photoshop.
People do things in slightly different ways as well, and you think, oh, that's slightly quicker, or always.
Yeah, and often, it's just a matter of like you're thinking like, oh, why are you doing this? And then of course you go, oh, that's why he's doing it. Okay, cool. So, but one of some of the responses that we had was that it was awesome, but it was maybe a little complicated, and a lot. It seems like a lot of people needed to kind of go back to basics a little bit more, and so we decided to start like a Photoshop back to basics series. So typically, what would happen is the photo video chat takes place every Thursday evening at 7:30. It's on Zoom, so you can find
7 UK time.
UK time, yes, I should say that. British Standard Time. That's what it is, isn't it?
Is it BST right now?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Right now? Yeah, I guess it is.
I think it is.
Must be.
So 7:30 p.m. British Standard UK time, just to cover it all. But you'll find the Zoom ID on our Facebook page. So go to facebook.com/Camera Shake Podcast. You'll see the Zoom ID there, and you can just join. And it really, this is really aimed at people who either don't have a lot of knowledge of Photoshop and are just starting out, or maybe people who are thinking about it. Because this was another thing that came up quite a lot. People are quite familiar with Lightroom, and they were thinking of sort of transitioning to Photoshop, but weren't really quite sure, because actually, once you feel very familiar with one thing, then Photoshop seems such a confusing, huge new thing that it seems off-putting almost. And so by going back to basics, like literally really right back to basics, it's a chance for people to just join in and learn about Photoshop really right from the beginning. I mean, the thing we did last week was like literally just like looking at the layout, looking at the menus, looking at where the tools are, what all the different, all the different fields on the screen do and how that works. So we weren't really going into anything too specific. It was just a general tour of Photoshop, and so now, from like week on week, we're going to be looking at different techniques, and it's really going to be starting from beginner level. So we'll be looking at like how to remove things in Photoshop, for example, like simple things like that.
But even though that it's going to be, we might class it as beginner, I forget stuff all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
All the time. And there are some, I forget exactly what it was now, but even in the prior week's photo video chat where I was still able to attend, and you were going through the portrait touch up, there was stuff right at the start where I thought, oh God, of course.
Yeah.
How could I forget that you could just hold Alt and do that? It's simple little things like you forget this stuff.
Well, and also there's always like 5 different ways to do the same exact thing in Photoshop. Right. And then the question is always like, do you need to know all of these different ways of doing the same thing, or when do you use one thing and when would you use another thing? And and why does it work in the way that it works? So or the way that it works. So it's useful sometimes, even for people who are maybe intermediate or a little bit more advanced, to go back to basics.
Absolutely.
And just refresh on that. So really, I mean, although it's a Photoshop back to basics kind of sequence of classes, if you want to call it that, and it is definitely aimed at beginner level Photoshop users. I think it's extremely useful for people who've been using Photoshop for a while. And I say this as somebody who's been using Photoshop literally since Photoshop 1 or 2, like since the late 90s. And on my whatever it was, like 486 PC or whatever, right? Whatever it was at the time. But even like sometimes when I watch videos, like tutorial videos about Photoshop, I see things and I think, you know what? I've never known this.
Yeah.
Like I've been using Photoshop.
Happens to me all the time.
Pretty much from the beginning. So it's.
I honestly, I think it's so arrogant if you or I or anybody think yeah, I know how to use Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever. Trust me, you don't, and you forget so much. And there's so many different little new things that come in each time that they don't tell you about.
Oh well, I mean, this is of course the one thing. It's and I can say this because I've sort of almost like grown up with Photoshop. If I compare Photoshop now to what it looked like in 1998 or whatever, it's, you know, some of the tools that we would consider the most basic tools just weren't available back then. They just didn't exist.
Yeah.
The magic wand, you know, not that you would really want to use that, but you know, it's a simple solution to fixing a problem in a very, very simplistic one-click kind of way. And in some instances, this may actually be exactly what you need to do. But you know,
in fact, I've used that a couple of times recently.
Oh yeah, I use it all the time. You know? I mean, I say all the time, but I use it frequently for some very basic things when it's not that important to be accurate.
Yeah,
you know, that's it.
Absolutely.
So every Thursday, 7:30 p.m.
Yeah.
British UK Standard Time, whatever it is, on Zoom. Again, one more time, you know, you find the Zoom ID on Facebook, facebook.com/Camera Shake Podcast, and you can just join us there, you know, and learn about Photoshop.
Although, as this airs on a Thursday, photo video chat would have actually already happened this week, so you need to move it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this on the day of release,
this is very true.
Photo video chat will not be tonight.
That's very true.
But it will be every Thursday moving forward again.
Yes, so it will be. So under normal circumstances, it's every Thursday. Just make sure you check our Facebook page, because no one else is out. So yeah, it's really that simple. I think, you know.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so what else been happening then?
Nothing in particular with me, but there's a few things I've been reading about this week. Actually, I've even got the iPad out. It's all fun. Oh, it's getting warm. That's not right, is it? Shouldn't get warm, should it?
I don't know. It's
the screen hasn't turned off for a while, but there you go. Oh, good. Running out of battery. Real fast and simple one. Nikon finally have their webcam software sorted.
Well, hey.
We've mentioned it about all the other manufacturers. Just finally mentioned it about them. Couple of issues with it.
I'm immediately suspicious.
One, obviously it's only Windows.
Oh, God.
However, they have confirmed Mac is on its way.
Right.
So that's a win. Not all cameras are supported.
Okay.
Your camera is not supported, I believe, 750.
Yeah.
Couple others as well. I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know why that's the case, or why. I have no idea. I didn't see any detail on that. However, I suspect it might end up being one of those that you get the software, try it out with your camera, and it'll probably end up working. Who knows?
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
Who knows?
Is it free?
Yeah, I believe so. I stand corrected if that's not accurate, but my understanding was it was free. And the other one was, and I haven't seen this mentioned on any of the other manufacturers' cameras, but there's comments already that obviously live view ends up staying on your camera. And your cameras apparently get very, very hot when running this.
Oh.
But I find that hard to believe that it's any hotter than when you're using live view to do video on these cameras.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right? So I think that's a little misleading that that's an issue. But
I mean,
it's something to be concerned, not concerned about, sorry, that's the wrong word. But it's something to note and to be aware of. And obviously your battery's going to drain more because it's live view on constantly, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. All to be expected, I think.
I mean, generally speaking, filming in live view and having live view on for a long time, cameras will get warm. We know this because we actually have two Nikons filming us now and a Panasonic. And so the thing is, you can obviously tell that the cameras are getting warm. That's a million miles away from overheating, though. I mean, and I'm wondering whether this whole chat about overheating it's just kind of, it's sort of a reaction to all this chat about the Canon R5 and the R6 overheating, blah, and all that kind of, do you know what I mean? I was just wondering whether it's like just jumping on the bandwagon with that a little bit.
Could be.
Yeah,
fair comment.
There's been a lot of overheating chat recently. This is why this makes me suspicious. And you're right, there is no particular reason as to why it should get any hotter doing that than if you were filming in live view. I mean, if you think about what's happening with our cameras here, they're on. The Nikons basically have a 20-minute video duration, or whatever you call it.
That's just made me consider something, but I'll let you finish.
But of course, what happens is we don't use it like that. We film a 20-minute segment, then we press record again, and we record another 20-minute segment. So our cameras don't rest and cool down in between.
Yeah.
After 20 minutes. So our cameras are on for a good hour and a half, usually, consistently.
Yeah.
And they get warm, but they're not overheated.
It's not hot. It's not hot, is it?
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
Even in this weather, we're 33, 34 degrees right now. Probably hotter in this room.
Yeah. And if your screen's going green right now, then that's probably a sign that our camera's overheating. So it's just like something, who knows? Yeah. No, but I mean, generally speaking, it's I've really never been worried about.
Me either.
That's certainly not. I mean, it's not.
So what I was about to say a second ago was that I do wonder whether using it as a webcam with live view on for 20 minutes, whether they're allowing it to stay on for longer as a webcam. Yeah. So there is zero break, perhaps. There's none of that 20 minutes stopping at any point. So, but we're using it for an hour and a half permanently, and no issue. 2 different cameras. Absolutely fun. I think it's misleading. Either way, the software's there finally.
Right, cool.
I don't see any issues with it really. I'm sure it works. I'm going to try it because I just use a. The brand escapes me. Logitech. Oh, yeah. I use a Logitech webcam normally. Right. But I'd love to use my DSLR as a webcam. That'd be great. Will it be any better? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I mean, just coming back to the discussion that we had, some time ago, where do you remember we were talking? I mean, this was like I don't know how many episodes ago. We were talking about webcams in general, and I think you had just gotten a new webcam, and we were talking about it, and I kept thinking, well, why would I want to buy another thing when I have a bag full of things that are supposed to be doing the same thing here, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the more functionality you can kind of cram into a mirrorless camera, the better, really, because you can use them in more ways.
Yeah.
And so I mean, with
the difference, right, for me, right at the minute, is that I don't have to go and connect my camera up and to jump on a quick zoom or whatever it is. The Logitech it's just sat there. It's permanently attached, doing its function, and that's the benefit. It's convenience.
Oh yeah,
for me.
For sure.
That's all it is, right? And if you're on Zoom and you're doing web calls or whatever all regularly, then perhaps having a separate thing like that is warranted.
Yeah.
If you're not, and it's just once in a while, once a week, twice a week, then setting up your camera on something isn't a big deal.
No, and I think I mean, I would probably say that I probably wouldn't want to have like my studio camera set there waiting for me to do Zoom calls on. But for instance, something like my Fuji. Yeah, why not? Yeah. On one hand, it would look cool on the desk, and on the other hand, you could use it as a webcam. Sure, why not? No problem at all.
It's all about looks.
That's yeah, but it's also about kind of not having too much stuff. Look, I'm already annoyed with my desk because there's like,
haven't you only just got it?
No, the desk itself is awesome. No, the desk itself is awesome. So for those of you who don't know, I've just been redesigning my workspace at home, and so I turned this slab of oak into a desk, which is awesome. It is great, and all the rest of it. But I'm annoyed with the amount of stuff that's on the desk. Because you have a laptop, and then you have a mouse and a mouse pad, and then a graphics tablet and a pen thing, and speakers and a audio interface and all sorts of other shebang, like a loading, like a charging thingy for your phone, and all kind of jazz. So there's like a lot of stuff on your desk already, and really all I want is like just clear space. So to have another webcam on there,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So it's like, for the sake of simplicity, I don't know, you know, it's gonna. I think different things work for different people, probably.
Totally.
You know, I've been sort of trying to declutter. I think that's been my mission.
And I don't disagree with you.
Because I mean, you're generally much more decluttered than I am. You know,
I
sure.
try to be. I'm getting more cluttered though. It's weird.
That's funny. So we're kind of equalizing.
Yeah. Now that our set is kind of in my room, running out of space.
Right. Well,
but I'm happy with that. Looks cool. Love it.
Yeah. It's definitely it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because if you remember, like back in the day, we're like 16 episodes in, but
4 months ago.
Yeah, but if you think like when we first started this podcast, you know, it was literally a matter of like doing 2 complete setups, because you'd have to set up here, I would have to set up at my place,
pain.
And then we'd have to, you know, transfer the files. They were large files as well. That's just linking back to the conversation we had earlier.
Yeah.
Because what would happen would be we would film ourselves independently, and then, you know, I would take the files from my Nikon and then send them over to you, and you would edit them in your studio. So again, this wouldn't have been possible only a few years ago if we'd had to like jump in the car and like, you know,
imagine
that would, it just would, I don't think it would have happened. Do you know what I mean?
We would have, you know, it's too much work for what it's worth. You know,
yeah, and then
it would have been easy to say that then, I think.
Yeah, and you know, and of course, at the height of the whole coronavirus lockdown sort of thing, you know, you would have had to like get in the car, drive, you know, all the way down here, and exchange memory cards or whatever, and then of course at some point you would have had to fuel up, and that would have meant you would have had to go to a gas station, fuel your car up, and pay and meet other people, and so I mean, there would have been more of a kerfuffle and possibly more of a risk than just doing it all online and emailing stuff.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
But things like iCloud and WeTransfer and file mail and all of those kind of, I'm sure there's many other services out there, but God, hasn't it made our life easy?
Oh, for sure. I mean, file mail is what we used to use, you know, for the video files.
But isn't it also amazing how quickly you get used to those, like, convenience? It then becomes inconvenient when there's something else you want to do. Terrible, but it's true. Yeah,
totally true. And actually, those were the exact thoughts that I had when my wife and I first started talking about getting rid of one car. Because it's a matter of convenience, and it's amazing once you have 2 cars. I mean, I remember the times when, you know, you don't have that much money, and like just affording one car was a luxury, you know, let alone 2. Do you know what I mean? And then of course, once you're in a position where you can afford to run 2 cars and, you know, all the rest of it, you get so used to that so quickly that it's, you know, when you first come across the thought of reducing the number of cars you run, you think like, oh, but it's going to be so inconvenient and blah blah, and really, it's really not actually. You know, it's all perfectly doable.
Apart from today,
apart from today, just saying, under normal circumstances. But then again, you know, if you think about that, then, you know, we, you know, made other arrangements and it all worked out in the end. And so, and that's going to be more necessary, of course. You know, the arrangements will have to be made. But then arrangements can be made. It's not a problem. It's you know, is it really that much more inconvenient? Well, not really. You know, it's sometimes you have to change plans because you're less independent, you know, for sure. But then there are people who don't have a car at all. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like
I didn't have a car for the longest time. I didn't learn to drive until I was in my 20s. And
really, okay,
yeah, and I was gigging already. You know, I've been gigging solidly since I was like 16.
So how old were you when you first learned to drive?
20. I was like 25.
No, right, okay.
Wait, 24. 24.
Yeah. Well, it's still not too
so
bad.
It's not that late, but at the time it was certainly considered very late. and managed it because I was very fortunate to have friends who did drive, and that they would collect me for gigs and things like that. Very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have that, God, I wouldn't be able to do what I was doing.
Well, I mean, this is the one thing that's often struck me in this country in particular is sometimes how late people learn to drive, and this is like no criticism or anything. It's just an observation.
Sure.
And because I know a lot of my friends and my wife actually, didn't learn how to drive until they were like in the late 20s, 27, 28, 29, 30, whatever. And that's always, in a sense, it's always felt weird to me because where I'm from, when you hit 18, you got to get a car. I mean, that's like, first of all, it's like, it's a complete sign of independence.
Is it supposed to be a BMW as well?
Yeah, that'd be nice. Any car, man, any rusty old thing that has wheels and drives, it's fine, whatever. But yeah,
there's 180 down the autobahn.
He's no speed limit, my friend.
Of course, yeah, I know.
What are you saying, 180? Come on, let's not slow us down right there. No, but but the reality is, yeah, I wish I could have afforded a car that I would do 180. It's like not going to happen. No, but it was one of these things where, and also the other thing is, of course, I mean, now, we're in the London area, or in the greater London area, so there's plenty of public transport options around, and it's easy to move around by tube and on buses and whatever. And where I grew up in the south of Germany, man, you're in the vineyard. There's freaking nothing going on. You consider yourself lucky if there's a bus, right? But the distances are such that unless your parents take you everywhere, you just can't get anywhere because you'd be walking for 3 days. So you had to have a car, and so it became more of a sort of a symbol of independence. That at the age of 18, when you hit 18, because it was the law, the legal driving age was 18. So once you hit 17 and a half, bang, you're doing driving lessons, no questions asked. And then then by 18 you're driving, and it's not necessarily that you could afford to buy your own car. It was more like you can use your parents' car to drive or something. And that was the thing. But I remember growing up, it was pretty much unheard of that somebody would do their license in the mid-20s. It was just not something that people did. But again, that was different circumstances, so but yeah, I mean, still to this day, it's like, when I speak to friends and they're like, I didn't learn how to drive, let's say I was like 32 or something, and like, oh wow, okay, how did you get around? So totally forgot what we were talking about originally.
Nikon's webcam.
Wicked.
So far on this podcast, we've talked about
some photography.
Okay.
That's how it goes.
Right, come on, talk to me. What have you heard this past week?
Okay, so there was one funny thing I came across. This week wasn't necessarily great for photo news.
Okay.
But there was one funny thing I came across. So, you know how sometimes like scientists or biologists set up wildlife cameras in a tree or something somewhere in the forest, because they're hoping to catch certain animals, not catch certain animals, but take photos of particular animals, maybe rare animals or animals that they're tracking or something like that.
So, those people who want to take late night wildlife photography but can't be bothered to stay up. Yeah. Those people. Yeah. I'm joking. More I'm so joking.
More like scientists. I'm talking about scientific research, right?
I'm so joking.
And so in the US, there was this incident which I read about, whereby these biologists, I think, set up a camera overlooking, like in the middle of a forest. I can only guess it's probably somewhere in the Pacific Northeast. I'm guessing because it didn't actually specify it in the article. But they were I think they were trying to track bobcats.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So they set up this camera in a tree, and it was sort of overlooking this tree trunk, and they were hoping, it's like a motion sensor sort of thing. So they were hoping to catch some bobcats, and they did when they were checking the photos. Only when they were checking the files, there was one photo of some random dude doing poses. And I never found out who that guy was. It was just some random dude.
No way.
Oh man, it was hilarious. So I kind of thought that was a funny story.
So how was he triggering that and being able to pose?
It was just, I think it must have been just.
Is it triggered, then time delay, and then?
I don't know. He was just
moves
like,
into
they've just
frame.
found these photos of this guy.
That's amazing.
Just, sitting on a, like lying down on a tree trunk, just doing funny faces. It was hilarious. But I mean, what really made me laugh is the fact that they still haven't been able to figure out who he was.
No way.
So it's like, just imagine you're expecting like,
if that's made photo news, then someone's gonna know who it is.
It would be funny. I mean, we'll put that article on Facebook, of course, and we'll feature the photo even.
Oh, for sure.
So if anybody knows, or if anybody recognized themselves, wouldn't it be hilarious that out of the 30 people that that listen to this podcast,
he's one of them.
What? Wicked. Wow. So that would be funny. But anyway, so that was one of the fun stories I came across this week.
Love that. Yeah. It's fun. So something I did read last few days was about shooting locations, and the reason I started reading it was related to the Ferrari shoot that we did a few weeks back. Mm-hmm. And obviously we had to scout out some locations. And the article I read was about a few tips on what to do and what to look for when you're scouting out a shooting location.
Okay.
Which is cool. And I thought, I'd share just some of the detail from that article I read, and we'll link to that in the show notes and in the description on YouTube as well. And so I thought I'd just run through a couple of those bits. So the first one that they mention in this article was around understanding the light's location. Mm-hmm. So where is the sun in that location? So, and it wasn't necessarily directing you to go and find a location where the light is always going to work for you. Mm-hmm. It's more about making, if the location seems to be right, making the light at the right time of day work for you. Mm-hmm. So understanding, so the example they gave was take fashion. You might look at doing wider shots where the sun and the lighting is really important earlier in the morning, later at night where it's not above our heads. You might look at doing closer shots and, tighter shots, head shots, whatever it might be, in maybe slightly different areas during the day where the light's more harsh. Yeah. It seems like common sense, but perhaps isn't in the forefront of your mind when you're looking at a location for most people. And then also consider how the light will change during the day. So now, this is the luxury that some pros will absolutely have. They can be all day at a location or have someone else be all day at a location. Not everybody's going to have that kind of luxury, but have someone there who can shoot quickly at 7 a.m., midday, 4 p.m., 7 p.m., 9 p.m., whatever, depending on the time of the year, what that location looks like. How that sun moves across that location, depending on where the trees are, depending on where the buildings are, everything is going to change as that sun moves. So if you see that between this hour and this hour, actually it's a significant change, but between this hour and this hour, there's not much change. That might be the hour that you go for.
Oh, okay.
Little things like that.
Yeah.
Little things like that. So, things around lighting. Second was, as you're looking around the location, plan your gear. Are there tall buildings or dense trees knocking around? Perhaps. You might want reflectors. Are you going to need flags? Probably if you're outside. Are you going to have wind to contend with? Is there sand knocking about? Is it a beach type location? Is there dirt and dust that's going to be flying up into? Depends what you're shooting. It may be relevant. It may not. If you're shooting a model, it could be very, very relevant. So things about your gear are going to be relevant. Are there going to be things that are going to reflect? Let's take the Ferrari example. We found that we didn't necessarily notice as much on the day, but in post you saw that actually the reflections from the trees were quite significant, and took a little more work than you'd have liked to make it work. So making sure that the right flags, black cloth is on the ground if there's other stuff to, bounce off. And...
Yeah, I mean, in that case, that's the thing. I think we on that particular shoot we could have done with like at least one, a big scrim or something, just like as a diffuser. Yeah, that was definitely something that wasn't very noticeable on the day.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not that I would have not. I just didn't notice it on the day.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, shooting in a forest on a relatively sunny day, because it was a sunny day actually. It wasn't particularly overcast. That's much trickier than you might think because of that. It's just because you've got direct sunlight coming through the leaves, and so you have these, these splatters of sunlight all over the place. It's just tricky to.
And if you're taking a snapshot, keyword being snapshot, actually that might be great and look fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not what we were after.
And that's also not what we wanted. No. And that's the thing. I mean, and I think the thing with that is depending on what it is that you're shooting. Like, for instance, if you're shooting a portrait, in the middle of the woods on a day like that, these kind of reflections, not reflections, but these kind of light splatters, if you want, might look great on the dress, but you certainly don't want to have them on somebody's face, for example.
Absolutely.
And so you need to kind of adjust for that. That's definitely the case. I mean, it just wasn't a thing at a time. That's the one, not necessarily, it wasn't really a mistake. It was an oversight, I think, as far as that particular shoot was concerned. It was just that we didn't take into consideration really the reflective surface of the car.
And it was highly reflective, it turns out, right?
Well, it was, yeah. In relation to the location that we were using.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. But, it's one of these things where, again, we talked about this before, but after the shoot, it's important to just go over the whole thing and basically look at everything that's gone well, everything that hasn't gone well, and and just do a bit of a recap, and then learn from that experience. And so the next time you're in a similar situation, you can basically go like, okay, well, I need this and then the other, and it might just make you more aware of what could potentially happen. Every shoot's a learning experience, and in order to get better at what you do, you just have to go through these kind of learning experiences. I think that's really, really important. And actually, it's important in any creative craft, photography being one of them. How do you get better at performing on stage if you're a musician? You can watch every single YouTube video there is about how to be a good performer. Ultimately, you just gotta hit the stage. You just have to hit the boards and just do it over and over and over again, and that's how you eventually get better. There's no two ways about it. So photography is really no different in that respect. And you just have to put yourself into situations that aren't necessarily ideal. That strikes me very often. That transition from shooting in a studio type location where you control everything to being on location where you don't necessarily have control over everything around you.
Right.
You try and exert some kind of control over things with things like flags and scrims and everything else. But of course, there's a limit to what you can actually do. Once you're in a location, you're kind of at the mercy of certain elements. And that's very different from being in a studio. And literally, because the way I like to personally start in a studio is by literally having just a black frame, nothing visible on a frame, and then you just build your image with different lights and different diffusers and light modifiers and whatever, until you've crafted the image that you want. And again, that's very, very different, because that's ultimately that's total control over your image.
Yeah.
Whilst when you're on location, you really don't have that. And then I think at the opposite of the spectrum are people who start out by shooting in natural light, and then move into controlling the light to some degree in the studio, because you have that a lot where people start their journey in photography by just shooting in natural light. And I think
sure.
more often than not, it's really true.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course it can seem scary now to have to control the light, and because you don't know anything about lighting ratios and all that kind of jazz. And ultimately, I think in the long run, you probably get to the point where you realize that it's like many things. You learn all that stuff and then you forget it all, and then you basically just you craft the image that you want to see, and you just use lights and and modifiers as your tools to actually create the image that you want to create. So this is the thing where you're not really leaving anything to chance. You basically have this idea in your head, and you think like, well, this is what I want to achieve, and then you use the tools that you have to achieve that to more or lesser extent of accuracy, if that makes any sense. Because sometimes I often find that you start out with an idea, you start out setting up lights, and then actually something happens and you kind of go, oh, that's actually much cooler than what I had in mind. And then it takes you down this path, and that's a bit like improvising a guitar solo, I think. Where you start playing and then it takes you down the rabbit hole. But anyway, so the difference is there you literally start with virtually no visible light, and then you just start building it up. So, but anyway, so back to the location thing.
Cool. So and then notes generally about the location. Is it accessible?
Yeah.
That's a big one. Can you get your gear there? Can you get any people that you're working with there? Can you get your models there if you've got models in your shoot? If you do have models in your shoot, is it an appropriate place to do hair and makeup, things like that? Does the hair and makeup have to be done in advance? Are they going to make it to the shoot with it still intact? I don't know. It depends what needs to be done. Things like that are worth considering.
So
right?
Accessibility, actually, I tell you what, that's a really good point. So just as an example, I was scouting out a location the other day for a potential client. It was actually through an agency, and they wanted a very specific type of location. And I sort of thought, I know the exact place. It's an old derelict former factory type of a thing, and it's a great location. It looks great. There's some graffiti there, and bare concrete walls and all the rest of it, and it'll look great in a photo shoot. But access is an issue, and I'm not actually even sure whether I can get all the gear that I need to that location. So that could be, the deal breaker on that one. So.
Definitely. So I mean, it was just to say, is it a trek? Is everyone actually going to be exhausted by the time they get there? People are tired. They've been walking for half an hour or an hour just to get to this particular location. Is it worth it? Are you actually going to end up with a worse shot, even if you think the location is slightly better?
I want to set up a photo shoot on Machu Picchu.
Yeah, I won't make it. Other little things like, is there parking nearby? Are there going to be other people milling around? Is there going to be crowds of people there? Worth considering. Is there? I go back to sand again because it's a pain. Is it sandy? What's the temperature like there? Another one. Is the area restricted in any way? I'll come onto that as a separate point in a minute. And the most basic of all things, is there a restroom nearby?
Yeah.
Huh? Are you going to be there all day?
Yeah, sure.
Someone's going to need to go.
Did anybody pack plastic bottles?
Well, exactly. And then what the next point that they raise is, does the location actually match the story that you're trying to tell in that photo?
Yeah, big point.
And that can be easier said than done. It's obviously very, very creative. But things that they talk about is perhaps your client has had other shoots done previously. And what you might find is with probably more bigger clients than anyone else is that they've had similar locations used previously. What have they had in the background of those photos? Is it, I don't know. Is it a hair product? I don't know. Well, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, sure. But does the location, is it relevant to what the story your client's trying to tell? Maybe not. Yeah. Check it out. And something which I definitely have not done before, which was a very cool idea. I don't know if you've done something like this before, Kersten, but is get something called a mood board from the client.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And that is simply, in case you aren't aware what a mood board is that is simply getting, photos, pictures of things that they envisage. They can imagine what the photo might look like. It might be pictures of brick walls. It might be pictures of fences, furniture. It might just be a color pattern from a Dulux catalog. It's stuff like that. Yeah. It might be textures of fabric. It might be textures of plants or whatever it might be. Things that they see. I want these kind of ideas in this photo. It doesn't mean you use all of those ideas. It doesn't mean you use any of them.
Yeah.
But it gives you an indication as to what that client is thinking. And that can be nothing but a good thing.
Yeah, that's very often that's really important. I use Pinterest for that.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah.
And that does happen. It does happen quite regularly, actually, when a client has an idea but can't communicate that idea necessarily that well. So sometimes a mood board is actually a really easy way around that, because you just, occasionally, there are occasions where it's pretty cut and dry and it's super easy. And also, of course, there are occasions where, as a photographer, you bring the creative ideas forward. So, as an example, for instance, somebody says, I need some headshots for my LinkedIn profile, right? You're not really going to get them to put a mood board together of like lots of LinkedIn headshots. You know what I mean? But what you do is, as a photographer, you give them like a number of different options of different looks, perhaps, and then they can either pick some of those, or you talk it through and you get a good idea as to what they like. Because that's very often that's very important. It really depends on what they're like and whether they, what kind of business they're in, what sort of thing they're doing. It's like the old example, somebody who's in a profession where they are very people facing and friendly and open. That's a very different type of headshot from a divorce lawyer.
Right.
Or like some hard hitting, I don't know, stockbroker, or somebody who's like right on the money, type of sincere, serious type of job, if you want. So these are very different people that work in different areas, and so therefore their headshots can look very different. This is just a simple example. So really, that's where you as a photographer really come forward with the sort of art direction, as it were.
Yeah.
But mood boards are really super, super useful. And like I said, Pinterest is great for that.
Absolutely. I love it. Absolutely love the idea of it. And, because there are so many generic words out there. They might say rustic. And?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that can mean 1,000 things to 1,000 different people. And just a little clip of something that they think is in their head just helps wonders, right? And it helps you then as the photographer to get the right direction and to go to the right location.
Yeah, and it also works the other way around, for instance, where you as a photographer can put together a mood board and you kind of say to the client, this is what I've had in mind, and you can adjust it a little bit.
Yeah.
So it works either way.
Yeah.
It's a very useful way of working, for sure.
It's cool, man. I'm definitely going to start using that more now. So the next point that they're going to is, and this is going back to permits and things like that, and that is get permission. And there are 3 primary kind of areas you might end up falling into, or 4, I guess, is 1, residential, 2, commercial, 3, government kind of related areas, or an area which is just needs absolutely nothing. You don't even have to worry about it. So we'll leave the last one because that's just kind of irrelevant. So the first one, residential, you may like the look of someone's house, their property, their garden, the grounds that they have, and you think, God, that would be perfect. Don't just go and shoot on it.
Who are your clients that have grounds?
They've grounds. They've got grounds.
Grounds.
But the chances are, right, you just go up to them, knock on their door, say, hey, I'm Nick, I'm Kersten. I would really love to do a photo shoot on your garden. And if you talk them through it, the chances are they're going to go, yeah, okay.
Do you know a show called Outnumbered?
I do. I haven't seen it though.
Right. Okay. So my 9-year-old daughter was completely obsessed with Outnumbered. It's basically it's a TV show over here in Britain. That's based around this family, like 2 kids, and it's like family life, and it's like a comedy type of thing. And what's cool about it is partially improvised because but they have two really young kids in the first series, and they grow up over, I think, is it like 6 series or something, whatever it is. But especially when the kids are younger, they didn't give them lines. They basically just explained the kind of the situation to them, and then they would literally improvise, and the main actors would react, right? And so it had this kind of this feel of being really natural, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it was filmed in an actual house. It was somebody's house, right, in West London somewhere. And so what they did was, the production company was, they basically, so they rented the house next door, and this is where the staff and the crew would kind of chill out and get changed and have makeup and all that kind of stuff. And then the other house was basically used as the filming location, and there were people living there. And for the duration of however long the filming of season 1 would last, they would literally move out. But it's like everything you see in the what looks like a set is actually just somebody's house, and it's just, you know, the fridge is somebody's fridge.
Love that. Love that.
But yeah, so that's a really good example for shooting like on literally,
that's cool,
in somebody's house.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. So and it was like, I think it's a fictional part of London that they made up.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure with something like that, I'm sure they're getting compensated in a significant,
sure,
more significant way. But I think for
wasn't the Harry Potter house somebody's house? I think wasn't that an actual house?
Maybe. I mean, there's loads of stuff filmed in Oxford. Which house in Harry Potter?
Like, the original Harry Potter house where he lived as a kid, where he lived under the stairs.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure that was somebody's house, and it was like they just renamed the road.
The road and whatnot. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was.
Was it called Pivot Drive or something? Is that what it is?
Oh, you're clearly a bigger Harry Potter fan than I am.
Oh, not really. I have kids. That's what I'm saying. I have kids and a wife who's a Harry Potter nut.
So residential, obviously, just knock on the door and just ask them, get a release form, and say, hey, that's cool, no worries, done. Commercial, I guess you can break that down into 2 areas. One being a smaller business, 1 or 2, 3, 10 people kind of business, and then you've got your bigger ones. The bigger commercial areas, or commercial businesses, sorry, they'll probably have a process in place that you need to talk to them about and go through. That's one thing. But smaller businesses, coffee shops, hairdressers, anything on the high street, anyone like that are a small business. And chances are, first of all, definitely do not just shoot outside their storefront without talking to them first.
For sure.
Secondly, if you do talk to them and you want to use that as a location, they will 99.9% say yes, unless they are so super busy that they can't afford the space. And the reason they're going to do it is because they're going to get some promotion out of it as well.
Well, and also, 9 times out of 10, whenever I've been in this situation, they'll actually give you, because they have the local knowledge. They're there all the time.
Yeah.
And they'll basically tell you exactly this would be a good time and this would be a bad time because this is happening now or something else happening.
Precisely.
So do you remember we had an issue one time where we're doing a project for a tattoo, tattoo shop.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of an alleyway. And we were filming some stuff outside, you remember?
Yeah, they.
And so that was.
Yeah.
So there were some issues because some of the neighboring shops had concerns about access. I think it was that what it was? I think it was there.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
And so it really just took some conversations to sort that out in the end. So that's a really good example. There's another example actually where I found a location which I was thinking about for another car shoot, in fact. And it's just outside. It's like a yard in front of a wood recycling center type of thing.
Okay.
And it's just, I like the yard area because it's quiet. It looks kind of run down and very dirty and like stuff falling off the walls and stuff. But it's a really cool location to shoot something in. And so I had a quick chat with the recycling center, the guy who runs that, and they were totally happy for that to happen. Now, obviously, you don't want to do that during business hours because, they have customers turn up and whatnot. But then you also don't necessarily want to just rock up after hours and start shooting there because, you know, somebody might call the cops on you,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, and you don't want to be, you know, you don't want that to happen. So, so just a quick chat with the guys who run that recycling center. You know, it turns out there are particular days when it's really, you know, it's no problem and they're not open on a whatever Sunday or something. And it's, you know, it's quite easily facilitated. So it's, you know, conversations are sometimes all that it takes.
That's it. Absolutely. And, you know, and a good point this article made was about, you know, some of these smaller businesses, particularly if you're inside as well, or you want to be inside, that just say to them, look, you know, while I'm here, I'll take some additional shots for you that you can use for your own purposes, free of charge, you know, just for saying, hey, thank you. You know, here's a load of shots that you can take, and you can go and use these wherever you need to go and use them.
Yeah, you can always barter, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what it's all about. And now, why wouldn't they be thrilled with that? I would be. If I was just, you know, for argument's sake, coffee shop owner. Hey, look, I'll do a load of photos for you while I'm here. You know, here you go. Yeah. We'll only be here a couple of hours.
And you never know, you know, sometimes just, you know, showing them some of your work might actually lead to another gig, as it were. So you never know.
This is true as well.
You know,
this is true as well. Anyway, there you go. So I mean, I could go on and on about that, but there were some of the key points from that I want to make sure I raised.
Yeah, it's definitely a good tick list. Location scouting it's one of these really tricky things, I think, where what I found an article I read some time ago, it was actually literally like couple of years ago or something, about this guy who shoots at different locations in New York City.
Okay.
And what he does is he literally puts pins on his Google map of lots of different locations. So he basically goes out, he finds a location, he puts a pin in there, and he writes a little description of the of that particular location. This might be like a backyard, or like, you know, it might be like an alley, or it might be a street location or whatever. And so whenever clients come to him and they say like, oh, you know, we're thinking of this and then the other, he literally just needs to look on his map and to look on his notes, and he'll have a number of examples of locations that might potentially match. And then he takes like a quick still just to get an impression. And of course, you know, the way things work in a city, I had this actually not too long ago. I was looking for a location for a drummer to do a particular type of kind of promotional shoot. And I had this perfect location in mind. It's a disused former, was it like a Home Depot type of a store? And it was shut down, and there was a parking lot, and the parking lot started like, you know, it had like plants growing, like weeds growing in it, you know, and it was derelict for quite some time. Easy access, no problem there. And actually perfectly safe shooting environment. And then when I drove past to scout out the location just to make sure everything's cool, they were already building on it.
No way.
So things like this start, you know, they change over time. So it's worthwhile to just, you know, to just keep that kind of thing up to date.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I love the Google Maps idea. That's very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. It's a tough idea.
Yeah, it's simple.
So simple.
Yeah, for sure.
So simple.
Yeah, I mean that's a really that's a good thing. And of course, with Google Maps or something, or even Apple Maps, you can just drop a pin on it. If you're at a location, just drop a pin. Or if you come across something, you know, you're just passing through and you think, oh, actually, this might be cool. Take a quick photo, drop a pin, done.
Love it.
And it's, I mean, I think the more examples you have of different locations, you know, in your area especially, the better.
Win, right?
Yeah,
can only be a win.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I quite like scouting out locations. It's good fun. Okay, we've almost come to the end of this week's Camera Shake podcast. There's really one final thing to mention, and that's the landscape photo stroke video competition that we've got going on. So you can submit your best landscape shots to us either via Facebook at facebook.com/Camera Shake podcast. Send us your image via Messenger, or you can email it to us at camerashakepodcast@gmail.com. And the deadline for this month's competition is the 16th of August. So you've got another 3 days from today. If you're watching this, or if you're listening to this on Thursday, then you've got 3 more days to get that done. And we'll be announcing the winner the following week, I guess. So we're doing.
We will indeed.
Cool. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And remember, we've got our photo video chat happening every Thursday at 7:30 British Standard Time. It'd be great to see some of you listeners and viewers there. So without further ado, see you next week.
See you later.